Priya set her tea down and said no. Not let me think about it. No, flat, immediate. She was 31, a senior analyst at a Bangalore fintech, and her director had just offered her a management title with a raise attached. She turned it down in the same meeting she was offered it, before he'd even finished the sentence. 6,000 miles away, a software engineer at a mid-size American firm did the same thing for the third time in 2 years. His manager pulled him aside, offered team lead, extra pay, a title bump. He said no. Again. 2 different continents, 2 different industries, the exact same answer. That's not a coincidence anymore. That's a pattern. Then an HR director at a Fortune 500 company said something quieter and worse. Her company cannot fill 30% of its open management positions. Not won't. Cannot. They post the roles, they interview, they make offers, and qualified people keep walking away. That's not one person turning down one job. That's a structural failure showing up in the recruiting data of a company with thousands of employees. Here's the number behind all 3 stories. A global workforce survey, over 14,000 respondents across 10 countries, found that 52% of Gen Z workers say they do not want to become a manager. Not right now. Not yet, ever. More than half the incoming generation of the workforce is opting out of the job that used to define career success. Researchers have a name for this now: conscious unbossing. Not burnout. Burnout is exhaustion from doing the job, not laziness. Laziness doesn't show up in 14,000 data points across 10 countries. This is something colder and more deliberate, a generation running the numbers on management in full view of what it actually costs and declining the offer on purpose. Let's be precise about what's actually being refused, because the loose version of this story is wrong. This generation is not rejecting responsibility. They lead projects, they mentor juniors, they own outcomes every day without a title. What they are rejecting is one specific trade, a particular deal being offered to them with particular terms, and they've decided the terms are bad. So that's the job for this video. Not to debate whether Gen Z is soft or whether ambition is dead. That's a lazy argument, and it doesn't survive contact with the data. We're going to price this trade, line by line, the way you'd audit a bad contract, and find the exact point in the last 5 decades where it stopped making sense to sign it. Here's the metaphor we're going to use for the rest of this breakdown, so lock it in now. Think of the modern middle manager as a crumple zone. In a car, the crumple zone is the section engineered to absorb a collision, built specifically so the impact never reaches the frame and never reaches the people sitting inside it. Here's the part people miss about crumple zones. The crushing isn't a malfunction. It's the design working exactly as intended. The metal is engineered to fold, to buckle, to sacrifice its own shape on purpose, so that the frame around the driver and the passengers stays intact. The manager absorbs the impact from above, layoffs, targets, reorganizations, so the team below never feels it directly. But here's the catch with crumple zones, and it's the question this whole video is built around. They only work as a safety system if you replace them after every single hit. A car that's already been in 3 collisions, still running on its original crushed metal, doesn't protect anyone anymore. So we need to ask, over the last 5 decades, did companies ever actually replace this one? To answer that, we have to go back to 1956, to a book called The Organization Man by William White. White studied the post-war American corporation and described an entire generation making a specific trade: hand over your individuality, your independence, even a piece of your identity in exchange for lifetime security inside the corporate ladder. In that system, in 1956, becoming a manager was not a symbolic upgrade. It was real power with real teeth. A manager set strategy for their division. A manager shaped what the product actually became. And a manager could hire whoever they wanted and fire whoever they wanted with authority that actually reached the people underneath them. And that power was not invisible. You could see it walking through the building. A private office with a door that closed. A salary that wasn't 10% higher than the team's. It was materially, obviously higher. A badge, a title, a parking spot. that told everyone in the room instantly exactly who mattered and who reported to whom. Now here's level 1 of the breakdown. The first piece of that trade to erode. Strategic decision making, the thing that used to sit with middle managers, got pulled upward, centralized, consolidated into the executive layer, into fewer hands, further from the floor. The manager who used to set direction for their division was now just relaying direction set 2 or 3 levels above them. So here's the mechanism, stripped down. At some point in the last 2 decades, companies quietly redefined what the middle layer was for. Not to decide, not to weigh options and take responsibility, just to relay. A decision gets made 3 levels up, and the manager's entire job becomes carrying it downstairs, unchanged, and making sure nobody upstairs feels the friction. Employees picked up on this fast, even if they couldn't name it. You'd push back on a decision, make your case, and watch your manager nod, then do nothing, because there was nothing to do. He didn't own the call. He was never given the authority to change it in the first place, only the job of announcing it and absorbing the reaction. Call that level 1 authority, gutted. Level 2 is the pay math. For most of the last century, the manager title came with a wage premium, and that premium scaled up as the company grew. That link is broken now. Managers still get bumped for the title, but scarce individual contributors, the specialists everyone is bidding on, routinely out-earn the people supposedly above them. One case from the research makes this concrete. A manager at a mid-sized tech firm hired a junior engineer, poached straight from a competitor to fill an open spot on his team. Payroll access wasn't supposed to leak, but it did. His new junior report was earning 1.5 times his own salary. Same building, same org chart, opposite direction of what the chart implies. Here's why that's not an anomaly. The open market doesn't price seniority, and it doesn't price a manager title. It prices scarcity. If your skill set is rare enough that 3 companies are competing for it this quarter, the market beats you up regardless of your rank. A manager title used to be a proxy for scarce judgment. Now judgment is cheap, and specific technical ability isn't. Level 3, status. For decades, the corner office was the entire point. A door that closed, a window, a title on a nameplate that told everyone in the building where you stood. Companies didn't just phase that out, they demolished it on purpose, replacing private offices and executive cabins with open floor plans where a manager sits at the same bench as everyone else. Here's the part companies never put in the press release. Open plan offices were sold to employees as culture, as collaboration, as flattening hierarchy for better ideas. The actual driver was square footage. Private offices cost more per person than open desks, and real estate sits near the top of every company's fixed cost sheet. Collaboration was the story, lease was the reason. Level 4 is where it stops being symbolic and starts being arithmetic. Surveys across multiple industries now show a huge share of managers are formally held to individual output targets on top of managing people, commonly in the range of 25 to 30% of a full contributor's workload. That's not a rounding error. That's a quarter to a third of a second job, stacked on the first one, unpaid. Spell out what that means in practice. Same title on the door, same single paycheck landing every 2 weeks. But now 2 complete jobs sitting on top of each other. Managing people, the one-on-ones, the reviews, the conflict mediation, and hands-on delivery. The actual output the business is paying for. Nobody renegotiated the salary when the second job got added. It just got absorbed. Level 5 is the tax that never shows up on a pay stub. Workplace research, run independently across several countries, keeps landing on the same result. Managers report higher burnout than the employees they supervise, not lower, not equal, higher. The people whose job is theoretically to shield the team from stress are, by the data, the most stressed people on the team. Name the specific cost driving that number. Emotional labor. A modern manager is expected to absorb every direct report's anxiety about layoffs, their conflict with a coworker, their burnout, their divorce spilling into their calendar, and respond like a trained professional. Nobody hands them a license or a script for that. They're running unpaid, unqualified therapy sessions between status updates, and it shows up in the burnout data every time. Now here's a piece of theory that predicts almost all of this. 1969, a book called The Peter Principle laid out an idea that sounds like a joke and isn't. In any hierarchy, people get promoted based on performance in their current role, over and over, until they land in a role they're bad at. Then, promotion stops. Everyone, eventually, rises to their own level of incompetence. Apply that directly to management, and the pattern is brutal and precise. Your best individual performer, the engineer who ships flawless code, the salesperson who closes every deal, gets promoted as a reward. Except the skills that made them elite at the old job have nothing to do with the new one. You don't gain a great manager, you lose a great specialist and manufacture at best a mediocre boss. Here's the modern twist that makes it worse than it was in 1969. Back then, skills decayed slowly. Now, in a fast-moving technical field, step away from hands-on work for as little as 2 years to manage people, and your edge is simply gone. The tools changed, the frameworks changed, the market moved on without asking permission. So the trade isn't just a bad promotion. It's a one-way door. Take a mid-level engineering manager. 2 years ago, they wrote the code. Today, they approve pull requests for a stack that's been rewritten twice since they last touched it. A new caching layer, a different deployment pipeline, tooling their own reports learned without them. When something breaks at 2 a.m., they can't debug it. The Crumple zone still absorbs the blame. It just can't absorb the problem anymore. Here's the counter argument, and it deserves a real hearing. Every generation before this one paid dues, worked the bad shifts, took the thankless promotion, ate the unpaid overtime, and called it earning your stripes. Boomers did it, Gen X did it, millennials did it too, grudgingly. So when 52% of Gen Z says no to management, the easy read is they just won't suffer like everyone else did. The data doesn't back that story. Gen Z isn't avoiding ambition. Job postings for senior individual contributor roles, principal engineers, staff specialists are up double digits year over year, and applications to those roles aren't drying up either. What's shrinking is applications to first-line management specifically. That's not entitlement. That's a workforce that ran the numbers on one job title and declined, while chasing every other rung on the ladder. Companies noticed the exodus and built an escape hatch, the dual ladder career path. One track still leads through management, hiring, firing, performance reviews, the Crumple zone job. The other track lets you climb on technical depth alone. Reach staff or principal engineer, and your compensation can match a director's, sometimes exceed it, with 0 direct reports and 0 performance review paperwork. For the first time, skipping management stopped meaning capping your ceiling. Look at the real numbers inside big tech. At companies like Google and Meta, a staff engineer can clear $400,000 a year in total compensation, more than the manager sitting one level above them on the org chart. Some principal engineers out-earn their own director. The message lands fast. You don't need the manager's title to earn the manager's paycheck. That's a fully funded path now. Now zoom out, because this didn't start with Gen Z at all. In the 1980s, Jack Welch took over General Electric and pioneered the layering, stripping out entire tiers of middle management for speed and efficiency. GE's headcount dropped by roughly 100,000 people through the decade. Wall Street rewarded it. Every CEO watching took notes. The flat org chart was born decades before anyone said quiet quitting. 3 recessions since then locked the pattern in. The early 1990s recession cut a wave of middle managers that companies never rehired. 2001 did it again, this time to the newly bloated ranks of dot-com era management. 2008 went further still, gutting entire regional and divisional layers during the financial crisis. Each time, headcount at the bottom and the top recovered. The middle never did. Fast forward to 2023, and the same playbook got a public name. Google told managers directly to cut layers between engineers and leadership. Meta announced it was eliminating a chunk of its own management roles specifically to flatten the org chart. Amazon told managers to widen their spans of control, meaning fewer managers overseeing more people each. This wasn't rumor or Reddit speculation, it was corporate strategy, said out loud. Look at the timeline, not the headlines. Between late 2022 and mid-2024, Google, Meta, Amazon, Salesforce, and Microsoft all ran layoffs that specifically targeted management layers, not just headcount broadly. That's 5 household names, one 18-month window, the same conclusion about the same job title. When 5 competitors who never coordinate all cut the same layer at once, that's not a coincidence. That's a market correcting itself. Add a new pressure stacking on top of all of it. A huge share of what justified a manager's seat was coordination, scheduling, status updates, flagging who's blocked. Project software, and now AI layered on top of it, does a version of that automatically in real time for free. The Crumple zone was built to absorb friction between people. Software is absorbing that friction now instead. This isn't an American quirk or even a Western one. Workforce surveys in the United Kingdom show the same pattern. Younger employees ranking management ambition below where older cohorts ranked it at the same age. Surveys out of India, a labor market with very different economic pressures, show the same dip in appetite for supervisory roles. 3 countries, 3 different economies, and the same number moving in the same direction. A separate international workforce survey put a number on the refusal itself. Respondents were asked directly, if you were offered a promotion into leadership today, would you take it? Across Gen Z and millennial respondents combined, a large share, well over a third in some breakdowns, said no. Not maybe with more pay, not depends on the team. A flat no to a job title people were told for decades to want. Here's where it gets darker, because refusing the title doesn't always mean escaping the job. Call it the quiet promotion. A worker gets handed the scheduling, the coordination, the responsibility for whether the team hits its deadline, everything a manager actually does day to day. No new title lands on their badge. No new number lands in their paycheck. The company gets the Crumple zone's job for free. Picture the actual person this happens to. 6 months ago, they were an individual contributor. Now they're the one running stand-ups, unblocking teammates, telling the VP which tickets will slip before the VP has to ask. Their business card still says the same job title it said a year ago. Their paycheck hasn't moved a dollar. They're doing the job everyone else refused, without the raise or the title. Let's be precise about what's happening here, because the discourse gets this wrong constantly. This is not a generation refusing to grow up. It's a labor market doing what labor markets eventually do to any position that stays underpriced for too long, correcting it. 52% isn't rebellion, it's arithmetic. The trade stopped paying out, so people stopped signing up for it. Go back to the Crumple zone. That's what a manager is built to be. The part that absorbs the crash so the frame around it stays intact. But metal engineered to crumple only works once. Hit it enough times without replacing the part and it doesn't spring back. It stays crushed, and eventually it stops protecting anyone at all, including the company that built it that way. If you're the kind of person who notices a trade getting repriced before everyone else catches up, wages, roles, entire career paths quietly changing value while the job postings stay the same, that's the specific thing this channel tracks every week before it's obvious. Subscribe if that's useful to you. That's genuinely the only ask. Zoom out to what this actually costs a company. An organization that can't staff its middle layer doesn't just have an awkward org chart, it loses its ability to translate strategy into execution at all. A CEO can set a brilliant 5-year vision in a boardroom. Without someone converting that vision into Tuesday's task list, it just sits there, unexecuted indefinitely. And the correction is already starting, quietly. Some companies have begun raising manager base pay specifically, not company-wide raises, targeted bumps aimed at one layer, because they watched their best individual contributors turn the promotion down flat. It's a direct response to refusal, not generosity. When the applicant pool for a role dries up, price is usually the first lever that moves. In the same breath, other companies are doing the opposite. They're cutting management layers further, flattening org charts, and pushing the coordination work that managers used to do onto software, project trackers, async status tools, AI-assisted planning. Same underlying problem. 2 opposite bets on the solution. One side pays more for the Crumple zone. The other tries to build a car without one. Here's the paradox nobody nobody in this debate wants to sit with. Fewer people want the job. That part's settled, the data's clear. But not one company, anywhere, at any size, has actually found a way to run itself without someone doing the work a manager does. Automate it, rename it, distribute it across a team. The function survives every attempt to delete it. That's because the layer can't simply disappear structurally. Somebody still has to take a CEO strategy, abstract, quarterly, stated in growth percentages, and translate it into a task list specific enough that a 22-year-old new hire can execute it correctly on a Monday morning without asking 12 clarifying questions. Strip that translator out, and the strategy stays exactly where it started, on a slide. This is basic coordination cost economics, and it's worth stating plainly. Cutting the translator doesn't remove the need for translation. It just relocates the cost somewhere less visible on the balance sheet. Instead of one manager's salary, you get 20 employees each burning an hour a week in confused Slack threads, redone work, and meetings that exist purely to figure out what was actually meant. Follow that forward, and here's the consequence for the next 10 years. The market is splitting into two distinct versions of the same job title. One is the empowered force multiplier, real authority, real resources, real trust from above. The other is the disposable title holder. Same responsibilities on paper, none of the power to actually discharge them. First in line when headcount gets cut. Let's define the good version precisely, because it does exist. A manager with genuine decision-making authority and real trust from leadership can make a team's total output larger than the sum of what its individual members could produce alone. Removing blockers before they cost 3 days. Protecting focus time, routing the right problem to the right person instantly instead of after a week of drift. So here's the sharp line, and it's not the title. Two managers can have identical business cards, identical headcounts reporting to them, identical Tuesday calendars packed with one-on-ones. The entire difference between the force multiplier and the hollow, uncool version people are refusing is whether real decision-making power actually came attached to the role or whether that power stayed upstairs. Now turn this back on you, because refusing management forever isn't free either. And I'm not going to pretend it is just to keep this comfortable. Staying an individual contributor for your entire career caps your compensation ceiling in most industries, caps how much you can shape decisions above your own desk, and in plenty of fields, caps how seriously your opinion gets taken in a room. Here's the structural reality underneath all of it. Almost nobody reaches senior executive leadership, VP, C-suite, the rooms where real budget decisions get made, without passing through some form of people management first. You can refuse the bad version of the role forever, but refusing the function itself usually means refusing the only proven path to the rooms where the leverage actually lives. Two paths skip the trade. Founders own the equity, so they're never assigned a crumple zone. They built it. The other is the outside hire dropped straight into a VP or C-suite seat, pay and authority attached immediately, skipping years of absorbing impact from the middle. Both paths cover a sliver of leadership hires. For everyone else, the gate stays narrow and almost nobody walks through it. So here's the resolution. The refusal was never about authority itself, it's about price. 52% aren't rejecting management as a category, they're rejecting this specific underpriced version. 2019 pay, no real headcount control, blast radius exposure from 3 directions, offer the real trade, market pay, real authority, insulation from blame, and the refusal evaporates. This was never principle, it was arithmetic. Here's the prediction, not the hope. Correction will be selective. Companies won't fix management out of conscience. They'll fix it where an empty seat actually hurts. Engineering leads, plant supervisors, clinical managers, roles where a vacancy stalls production or triggers compliance risk, get repriced first, with real budget and real authority. Roles where the gap stays invisible for a quarter stay broken indefinitely. So call it what it is. Conscious unbossing isn't a generational character flaw. It's a price signal, the kind a functioning labor market sends when it's working. Workers priced a role, found the number insufficient for the risk, and declined the trade. That's the same mechanism that raised nursing wages during shortages and pushed truckers to demand more during the freight crunch. The system is working exactly as designed. Go back to Priya from the opening, the one who turned down the promotion in under a minute. At the time it read like a lack of ambition. It wasn't. She'd run the math. 40% more responsibility, 11% more pay, and a title that put her name first on the blame list. Her no wasn't a rejection of leadership. It was a rejection of a badly priced number, which brings the metaphor to its close. A crumple zone only protects anyone if it gets replaced after every impact. That's the whole engineering premise. For 5 decades, companies kept replacing theirs. Burned out managers left. New ones stepped in. The system absorbed the damage and moved on. Right now, replacement has stalled. Fewer people step into the seat, and the ones still in it are cracking with no swap scheduled. Here's the line. Companies spent 50 years training their best people to see the manager's seat as a trap, not a reward. And now, the moment they need someone to sit in it, the ones who could still say yes are the ones who already learned better. Conscious unbossing isn't the workforce breaking down. It's the workforce finally reading the price tag correctly.